of Kentucky. Andy, I first got to go to the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. You are going to do the Kentucky Derby on May 1. Tell us about the crowd there, given the pressures of this pandemic.
Well, Churchill Downs is excited to return the Derby to the first Saturday in May. That's the traditional day. It's always been run with two exceptions. Once in 1945 during World War II, and the other was last year during the pandemic. So we're excited, even if the crowd will be a little limited because of social distancing requirements, maybe a little less than half capacity, but still the most exciting 2 minutes in sports will be returning to Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May.
Congressman Barr, some of my ancient ancestors were named after a gentleman named Henry Clay. There were two generations of Henry Clay King. You went to the Henry Clay High School in Kentucky, and it is a symbol of the tensions of race in this nation back well over 100 years and forever. Please discuss reparations and the tensions that you see between the two parties as we engage this debate again.
Well, no doubt there's so much partisanship in Washington, and, you know, President Joe Biden, who is a member of the other party from me, gave, I think, an uplifting inaugural address calling for unity and bipartisan solutions. Unfortunately, ever since that speech, we've seen a president govern from the hard left. As Karl Rove observed recently in the Wall Street Journal, this so-called infrastructure plan, which is really more of the Green New Deal and tax increases with no real effort to reach out to Republicans, it's really solidifying President Biden's reputation as the most profligate and partisan president in history. That's a strong statement, but unfortunately, there's really not been any genuine outreach to the other side of the aisle. Look, both parties deserve blame for this, but I would like to see this president and congressional Democrats in the majority reach out and just at least entertain some of our ideas.
Congressman, you said both parties deserve some blame for this, and this does seem to be the playbook that every time there's a new president, the other side says it's not bipartisan at all, and that president goes it alone and says, well, we couldn't get anything done if we actually tried to do it in a bipartisan level. What could Republicans do right now better to actually move closer to a bipartisan solution?
Well, look, this is not an infrastructure bill that the president is proposing. It's a $3 trillion left-wing wish list. Only 5 to 6% can be adequately described as financing roads and bridges, which is what both parties say we need. The most generous definition of infrastructure, which would include things like high-speed internet, broadband, ports, airports, even electrical grid reliability upgrades, those kinds of infrastructure investments, I think, would earn bipartisan support, but in this bill only account for about 30% of the total spending. We have a new definition of infrastructure, including the care infrastructure, which is really just a massive expansion of Medicaid. And then you have some of these other unrelated items, Green New Deal items that were included. But then on top of that, there's no consideration of Republican ideas on financing public-private partnerships and streamlining of permitting and regulatory reform. None of those Republican ideas are being even entertained. It's just more big government tax and spending, and unfortunately, a huge, massive tax increase that will bring us back to the bad old days of corporate inversions, moving jobs overseas, stagnant wages, and I would argue much lower wages. The National Association of Manufacturing says we're going to lose 1 million jobs in the first year if these corporate tax increases go into effect.
Congressman, if there was some sort of agreement that was smaller, say an $800 billion, $650 billion, some Republicans are asking for a bipartisan infrastructure bill targeting the areas that are more commonly thought of as infrastructure. Would you be willing to raise taxes to pay for it?
Well, I think we ought to consider user fees as a way to finance infrastructure. That's the way we've always done it in this country. But to make America less competitive by not just increasing the corporate rate from 21% to 28%, but taking our corporate tax rate to a level that's higher than the tax rate in communist China, raising it to a level that's the highest among all developed nations. Because remember, it's not just raising the rate from 21 21 to 28% that the president is proposing. He's proposing to do so without removing the base broadening reforms that we put into place in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And when you add on top of the federal income tax rate, the state and local corporate tax rates, that's where you push American corporations into a very non-competitive position.
Congressman, one final question, and I do this after President Trump gave support to the senator from Florida a few days ago, and of course with your lifelong work with Senator McConnell. I want you to frame for us how you perceive your Republican Party right now. So much as it's the party of Trump. Is it?
Well, look, I mean, I think our party is broad and diverse, just like the Democratic Party is. These are broad, enveloping coalitions, but we are still the party of limited government and free enterprise. And what we've seen, a troubling trend, is that big business, Wall Street, CEOs have kind of aligned themselves with the woke left. And maybe that's a reaction to the Trump phenomenon, where the Republican Party is more gravitating toward Main Street small businesses, farmers, rural America. We represent the grassroots American people, and large institutions are letting us down. Wall Street, and look, I believe in free enterprise, but if we're in this battle between capitalism and socialism, and the CEOs of the big banks, through their ESG agenda, is aligning themselves with the socialists, where are the capitalists in this country? I think we need people who really believe in free enterprise, and that's Main Street small businesses and entrepreneurs across this country who really believe in limited government.
Congressman, you are a skilled media operator, because you must know I've only got 40 seconds left and can't ask any follow-up questions.
See how he did that?
He's
gifted.
Andy, can you come back so we can pick up where we left off, please? There's some really important points we need to talk about. Congressman Andy Barr there, Republican from Kentucky. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.